Hello, Millwall fans. Paul Eiffel here. It's time for Chat with Chaps.
Hello, ladies and gents, and welcome back to another episode of Chat with Chaps. This is a Chaps Reacts video because we are reacting to the news that has just broke. Richard Cooley has just announced that George Saville, after over 200 appearances for the club, four times he's played for us, 2 permanent, 2 loan, will be leaving the club this summer after his contract expired. For me, this definitely warrants a reaction video because George Saville has been a critical part of our side now for a long time, certainly since he's come back from Middlesbrough. And this is a real big moment because for whatever reason, we don't know where George will be going, but it's safe to assume that he has found another club, that he's decided to take up that option up rather than staying at the Den. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to give my point of view on it, and I'm going to be real balanced here because I actually see this as there's one thing that with my head and my heart type thing, right? So for me, Sav is I love Sav. I think he's a fantastic player. I think he's a real Millwall character. He's a little bit old school, and I think he's one of the last remaining players that really understand the club. So there's a lot of emotional attachment to that, but I'm just going to try and keep it fairly balanced in that. And then I'm also going to talk a bit about Sav independently, and then I'll also go on to talk a little bit about some of the other players that have left out and or are being rumoured to be moving on. So let's touch on George Saville then. For me, I can see this as a real depends what happened next as to whether it's a good outcome or not. And what I mean by that is, do I think that George Saville should be a regular starter for our football club in the Championship next season? No. Do I value a lot of what he brings off of the field and the role that he can play to come on and impact games just like he did towards the latter part of the season? Yes. And for me, I think this is what it all boils down to. From a club's perspective, and again, I don't know any of this information. I'm just assuming. I would assume that Sav is one of the higher earners at the club. And he is 32 years of age. So from the club's perspective, you've got an aging central midfielder that, yes, has qualities on the pitch, but is unlikely to start many games next season. He is probably, as I said, one of the highest earners. So let's just say, I don't know, £15,000 a week. And therefore, at 32, you probably offer him a year's deal, right? Now, you're George Saville. You have a family to look after and to care for. You're 32. Football is a short career. You don't want a 1-year deal, right? And by the way, I'm assuming that we've only offered him a 1-year deal. I think it would be very un-Millwall-like to do anything else. So from that perspective, and there's been rumours of him potentially going to the US, Sav. So obviously we've got no idea where he's gone. But I'm looking at this from Sav's perspective. I'm thinking, right, well, if I can guarantee a better longer term contract somewhere else, then I'm going to have to move on. So this is why it's a real difficult one because I kind of understand it. And that's why I think it's really important what happens next, because while Sav, for me, isn't a starter anymore in the Championship, what he is he is part of a real dying art of footballers. I think if you look around, there aren't many players like Sav anymore. The way that the game is evolving, and what I mean by that is it's that kind of old school player that is a real leader on and off the pitch, can do a bit of the dirty work, gets in people's faces, manages the referee, controls the game. We've heard from players where Sav just says, Casper said this, Sav tells you when to press, when not to press, just controls all of that. And to lose that, by the way, it says a lot that clearly he's been snapped up already somewhere. I think that says a lot just how much people value those qualities because they are a dying art. But to lose all of that, and to put into context that we've also lost the leadership qualities of Sean Hutchinson, Murray Wallace, etc., it feels like a real changing in the guard moment. You know, Cooper and Sav, I think, are best mates. So how does that impact Cooper? I don't know. From a business perspective, if I was in control of the club, would I offer Sav more than a 1-year deal on his current terms? No, I wouldn't. So I understand it. And that is why, although I'm disappointed and I'm highlighting the things that we will lose, I think for me, it's about what we do next. If we go and bring in a Sav 2.0, a younger version of Sav, then I'm okay with that. If we bring in a 20-year-old from the Premier League that's dropped down, I'm not okay with that because you have to have a balance. Every single player, ex-player I've interviewed, has talked about how important it is to have a real good, solid core of professionals in the dressing room. And we've just lost Hutch, Wallace, and Sav, and they were all vital to that. So we need to bring that in. And I said this in my season review. We now need to bring in a central midfielder that impacts the first team, but also has those leadership qualities, or is someone that looks like they can go on to develop them. So, for example, I'm going to throw a few players out here. My number one pick would be Lewis Travis. I've said it for years. 27-year-old Blackburn captain. For me, he is the answer. He's got a year left on his deal. I would go and get him. So, Mr. Barrison, if you're listening, he is Sav's replacement. Other players, you know, there's a couple of players at Coventry, probably a little bit out of our price league, but Ben Sheaf, Josh Eccles, they can't all play with Radoni and Victor Torp, so maybe there's someone there. Malumbi is another obvious one in terms of having those leadership qualities and understands the club, and also quite like Randall, who got relegated with Plymouth. But we need someone that gets the club, understands the level, and can go on and build those leadership qualities, because it is a big miss. And that is why I understand the decision and I'm okay with it, subject to what happens next. And that's kind of where I am with that. Where does Sav go now? I don't know. There's been a lot of talks about him going to America. It wouldn't surprise me to see him drop down to maybe League One and secure a longer contract, because I don't think many Championship clubs would offer him a longer deal than a year, to be honest. But who knows? I'm not an agent, and I certainly know nothing about what goes on behind the scenes with agents and deals. But that would just be my assumption. But you know, I think let's see how this one pans out. But for me, it's all predicated on what happens next. So that is my reaction to George Saville leaving the club. I want to thank him for everything he's done. Real stand-up bloke whenever I had the pleasure of meeting him. And again, he's a dying art of football. And for all of the Neglis, the Azizes, the Ivanoviches, the Rees Bangora Williamses, that was a mouthful, which are all exciting and taking us in the right way, you have to have a solid core bunch of players and professionals that control and dictate what happens in the dressing room. Neil Harris saw the importance in that. Kenny Jackett before him, Gary Rowett obviously inherited it. And now it does feel like a real change of the guard moment with all of these players going out. And I'm sure Alex Neil is the sort of manager that I think appreciates that. So I'm sure he'll be also in the ears of Mr. Gallen and Mr. Berrison in that respect. I also want to touch on just some other players. So, by the way, how ironic was it that I think it was over the weekend that the club released a video that talked about Tony Craig and Paul Robinson and kind of just how you understand Millwall and get it. And then, you know, a couple of days later, we hear about Saville. It cannot be underestimated. And I can already hear people screaming and hollering saying that he wasn't going to play and he's not that good anymore. I get all that, but people underestimate the off the field impact that some of these players have. Hence, probably why Hutch was kept on. Anyway, moving on. The goalkeeper situation, it's a bizarre one. So, you know, it's Monday today, and Liam Roberts has been linked a lot with a move away. It looks like he's going to be moving on. So for the third season running, we find ourselves looking for a number one goalkeeper with Lucas Jensen's injury. We need to get that business done quickly, because we've all seen that even when, rest his soul, Matty started out and then Lucas this season, it takes a while to find your feet and to build that relationship with your back four, particularly two centre halves. And with Tanganga also looking like he's leaving, I'll cover him in a moment, it is vital that we go out and get a goalkeeper. But what do you do? Because do you bring in a goalkeeper that is genuinely trying to compete for number one, knowing that Lucas will be back December, January, and he's our number one? Do you fill a stopgap? What sort of player do you get in for a stopgap? Who would want to take that? So it's a real interesting one. We also know we don't have a goalkeeper coach at the moment. So the goalkeeping department is one that really concerns me. And then let's talk about Jaff. So obviously, I always get that wrong, that side. Big fan of Jaff. For me, Rolls Royce of a centre-back at championship level. I think he's going to go, a £1.2 million release fee. The boys covered this in the show in the week. If you've not checked that out, please go and have a listen to it because it's really some really good points of view there. But my perspective is that, it's almost been like a loan, another season-long loan, isn't it? Because with that release clause, which probably covered his wages for a year, it was basically, we'll get back what we paid out for him. And it's disappointing because it is very low, but I don't blame the club. You don't turn down the opportunity to sign a player of his caliber because of demands like that. Could we have negotiated a bit harder? I don't know. Who knows? But he was an outstanding player for us last season. Obviously, won the player of the season and helped us achieve a very good finish, and we thank him for that. But a Premier League club will take a punt. Any of the three promoted sides, they've all been rumoured to be after him. So for me, as disappointing as it is, get the deal done, get him out the door, and concentrate on bringing in a replacement. For me personally, I think Kramer is there, but I want one more. I want another really good centre back that can come in and influence the first team. And then I want that attacking right back so that Kramer can focus on his centre back duties. As much as I like Kramer there, he's not a full-time solution. So, but again, centre-back, goalkeeper, building that relationship. In theory, you could have it could be two players there that are not even in the building. So doing that work and getting those deals done as soon as possible is really, really crucial. So I'm hoping that we hear some news on that. I'm just checking my notes, just flicking back to Liam Roberts. For me personally, the reason I think he is going to be moving on is because he wants to be a number one, and we probably don't think he's good enough to be. I don't know that, and it's very easy to say, "Oh, he looks like a championship number one." You don't know. He's played such few games. You can't make that conclusion. So, again, if he wants to guarantee himself a 2, 3, 4 year deal and he's going to drop down, good luck to him, and we move on. And breathe. Is there anything else? I think I'd just wrap up by saying that Sav, I can see it from both points of view. I can see why we should have maybe spent a bit more to keep him, but I can also see why we haven't. And I think what happens next is crucial. I don't want a Daniel Kelly. I don't want a Luke Cundle. I want an experienced leader profile that understands the championship and will buy into the club and what Alex Neil's trying to achieve. That will cost money. That's him. Roberts, I've covered, but what is now really important is we go out and we secure the coach and the goalkeeper as soon as possible. And then we just get the Tanganga deal done because he's definitely going to go. I can't see any way he's not with that release fee. And then we can concentrate on bringing in reinforcements. I also just want to say a massive thank you to Peter Hamilton. Peter, I've never had the pleasure of meeting you, but you continue to donate. And I just feel I want to thank you publicly. So thank you so much, mate. It really does mean a lot. And I want to wish Craig well. I know you've had a few challenges at the minute, mate. And I just want to say all the Chat with Chaps family and of course, I'm sure the Millwall family are thinking of you, mate. So hope you're good. And yeah, it looks like it's going to be an exciting few weeks. George Saville leaving Millwall Football Club. It is a shame, but let's see what happens next. Thanks for listening. And as always, bye for now.
Hi, it's Steve Morrison here, and you're listening to Chat with Chaps, chatting Millwall, come rain or shine.